Hi, I'd like to talk about sexual desire in relationships with couples where their sexual desire seems unmatched and one person feels pressured and the other person feels disappointed, and how do you resolve this? And I'll be referring to a webinar I took yesterday from Dr. Marty Klein, a sex therapist in Palo Alto. He has a newsletter. You can go to his website and subscribe to it. He's also the author of His Porn, Her Pain. He does webinars for therapists. Since I'm a life coach, I took the webinar. And I really like a lot of the ways that he looks at things, like the narratives that we have around, what's normal or what's expected, or how we feel internally and what we focus on. For example, a lot of people think sex orgasms are the goal of sex, and he says, and your orgasm is going to last 3 seconds. Maybe it might last a little longer than that, but still, you're spending 20 minutes, maybe some of you only 2 minutes, for 3 seconds of pleasure. Like, that is not the goal of sex. If you're just having sex for the orgasm, then you're not enjoying the rest of it. You have a different issue, really, um, than, you know, if the only reason you're having sex is for an orgasm, then you're not enjoying getting the full pleasure out of sex, which is about expressing yourself and connecting with someone and exploring something and discovering something and being present with another person. And if you're bypassing all that just for 3 seconds of orgasm, there's something else to look at. You don't need an orgasm to have sex and to enjoy sex. And I can attest to that personally from my escort clients and from my own experience. But here in this video, I really want to talk about desire. And we have two types of desire problems that people present with. One is that one person wants sex twice a year, while the other one wants it twice a week. And according to Dr. Klein, these situations never end well. They don't end well at all. And you might think that, by the way, it's half the time it's the woman who wants it more, and half the time it's the man who wants it more. It's a myth that the man always wants it more. There are men with low desire or lower desire than the female partner. And just as it's very unpleasant for the person who wants it is not having it, it's equally unpleasant for the person who doesn't want it, because they feel pressured. They feel like they're a bad spouse. They're turning down their spouse. Is there something wrong with me? They might feel guilty for rejecting their partner. I'm a bad person. I'm a bad spouse. I'm a bad husband or wife. And the person wanting it feels, frustrated and disappointed. These situations do not end well. In general, these situations do not end well. He didn't say divorce, but I'm thinking intense pain and divorce likely at some point. But let's talk about the more common situation where um, you're initiating sex with your partner and she says no or he says no. And that happens all the time. I mean, how often do two people want to do the same thing at the same time? How often are two people, when they go out to dinner, wanting that same Italian restaurant or wanting to go to that same movie? How often do two people want to go to bed at the same time or go running at the same time, do the same thing at the same time? But when it comes to sex, people seem to expect this to happen. And when it doesn't, they often feel disappointed, hurt, rejected. And then they blame their partner for how they're feeling. So now this is not an issue about sex anymore. This is an issue about your emotional reactivity. I'm adding this part in now. Your emotional reactivity, your emotional wounds, and your unrealistic expectations of life and other people. Life will disappoint you. Dr. Klein talked specifically about, as adults, we have to be comfortable with disappointment. he said, in the next 7 minutes, you will be disappointed. We have to learn to be comfortable with disappointment and not give it this huge meaning of, oh my God, nobody loves me, I'm all alone. You have to be able to take responsibility for your feelings and for your partner. And I'll tell you, there's nothing worse than having sex with someone who's doing it as a favor, if you want to be honest. And that's why I think the idea of sex dates are so important, or finding out and really communicating with your partner around what makes them in the mood or not in the mood. And to have sex at a time when you're not tired. But anyway, so people will take this disappointment and then they'll blame their partner, and instead of taking responsibility, oh, I feel disappointed, and just being okay with that. The person who says no isn't happy saying no. They usually feel guilty or something. It's not the greatest experience, especially then if they're blamed for it, and then they have to feel even worse. So when one person wants to and the other doesn't, it's important when it comes to sexual activity that we deal with our own disappointment and that we do not take on emotional responsibility for our partners, whether during sex or when we have sex, is to be very clear on what is it that I really want, that I really need, and communicating it. And not like, I'm going to have sex with you to do you a favor because I know you're going to pout if I tell you no. I know you're going to be angry if I tell you no. I know it's going to be hell to pay if I tell you no. And now you're kind of in this coercive, codependent, and meshed situation, which you don't have to be. It's so important for people to notice how they're feeling and take responsibility for their own feelings. That's kind of what I do in my work. I mean, it is what I do in my work with coaching people. I don't help people with their sexual problems. I help people with their emotional wounding and their stories that keep them from being able to have the kind of sex that they want. And there are a lot of things that get in the way, like I feel rejected, I feel unloved, I feel disappointed, I feel all alone, I feel like you don't really want me. And those are all really stories that are created because people put sex in this different category from any other kind of activity they might do together. So I think it's really good to talk about these things. A lot of people don't want to talk about sex because it's not romantic. Like, why wouldn't you want to talk about it? It's fun to talk about it. It makes people be vulnerable and closer. And if you're in a relationship with someone that you can trust, who doesn't use your vulnerability against you, it's very sexy to talk about these things. I know what it's like to be with someone that has a equal desire for sex with me, but the quality of it is very missing. And for me, there was a lot of stuff around still wanting a person who was treating me with such emotional unavailability in the bedroom. So that can be another thing. He didn't mention this in the webinar, but I'll throw this in. Like, you're having sex with this person, your desires are matched, but the quality is missing. It's missing. That person isn't present with you, or it's just using you to get off, and it's not connecting with you, and then it's not really satisfying. So those are all different emotional things, but we have to look at our emotional states. Are we communicating what we want? Does our partner care what we want? Am I with someone who's just avoidant and unavailable and doesn't care how I feel? There's a lot more to that. But other in general, just expect that you and your partner will not always be in the same mood, and find ways to kind of work around it. Dr. Klein talked in the webinar about a woman. I don't know if that was a patient of his or something he read, where the woman was like, I'm a woman, I don't initiate sex, but when I'm in the mood, I wear the same nightie I wore on our wedding night, and then he knows I'm in the mood. So whether you light a candle or you just give a little hint, but you're kind of putting yourself out there, and you have to be willing to put yourself out there in a relationship and say, you know what, I'm putting myself out there. I really want to be intimate with you right now. But it's okay if you don't want to. You have to be able to get to that like inner grounded, wholesome state. And, sometimes your partner might say, I'm not in the mood, but maybe I could get in the mood. These are some things that might help me get in the mood. Because in relationships, it's so important to nourish each other's feelings and care about each other's feelings. And I would end with this. If you don't care about your partner's feelings because you're angry or resentful or numb, what is that really about for you? And thank you for watching my video.